Imagine growing up inside one of the most powerful empires on earth, surrounded by marble halls, silk curtains, and watchful eyes, raised as royalty, yet never allowed to speak in public. Not once, not ever. No speeches, no recorded conversations, no voice preserved in history, just silence. So, who was this princess? Who decided her voice had to disappear? And more importantly, why? Because when historians went looking for answers, they didn't find a simple explanation. They found something far more unsettling. A royal life deliberately erased into quiet. Her name was Amalasuntha, a 6th century Ostrogothic princess, later queen, who ruled over Italy after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. At least, that's what the records call her. But here's where things get strange. In official court writings, letters, and political records, her presence is undeniable. She governed. She made decisions. She influenced the future of a kingdom balancing between Roman tradition and Gothic rule. And yet, her personal voice is almost completely absent. No speeches survive. No direct words attributed with certainty. No public declarations in her own name. For a ruler, that's not just unusual. It's almost impossible. Amalasuntha was born into a world of power and tension. Her father, Theodoric the Great, was one of the most influential rulers of his time, a Gothic king who controlled Italy while maintaining the legacy of Rome. She was educated in Roman traditions, fluent in Latin, familiar with philosophy, literature, and governance. By all accounts, she was highly intelligent. So why does history remember her as silent? At first, historians believe it was simply a lack of surviving records. After all, the early medieval period is full of gaps. But then something didn't add up. Other rulers from the same era, both men and women, left behind speeches, letters, decrees, or at least secondhand accounts of their words. Amalasuntha didn't. And that raises a bigger question. Was she truly silent, or was her voice deliberately suppressed? One theory points to politics. After her father's death, Amalasuntha ruled as regent for her young son. That alone made her powerful and vulnerable, because in the Gothic court, power wasn't just inherited, it was contested. Many Gothic nobles distrusted her. They saw her as too Roman, too educated, too different. And in a court filled with rival factions, a woman with independent authority was already a threat, but an outspoken one, even more dangerous. Some historians believe her silence wasn't literal, but enforced, not by law, not by decree, but by the structure of power itself. Her decisions were recorded, but often through male officials. Her policies were implemented, but credited to the court. Her voice filtered, redirected, controlled. But that's only part of the story, because then researchers uncovered something even more revealing. A collection of letters written by a Roman statesman named Cassiodorus, one of her closest advisors. These letters were written in her name, but not by her. They present her as articulate, intelligent, politically aware. And yet, they are someone else's words, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Was Amalasuntha speaking, but only through voices approved by the court? If so, her silence was an absence. It was containment, a controlled narrative, a curated identity. And in a royal court filled with intrigue, that kind of control wasn't unusual, because royal courts didn't just govern nations. They controlled perception. Every word mattered. Every message was political. And sometimes silence itself became a strategy, especially for someone like Amalasuntha. She stood at the intersection of two worlds, Roman and Gothic, trying to maintain stability in a kingdom that was constantly at risk of fracture. One wrong statement could spark rebellion. One public stance could alienate half the court. So perhaps her silence wasn't just imposed. Perhaps it was necessary. But then the story takes another turn, because her reign didn't end peacefully. Amalasuntha was eventually imprisoned and later executed. Officially, it was a result of internal power struggles. But many historians believe it was something more calculated, a removal of a ruler who didn't fit the expectations of her time. And when she died, whatever voice she had left disappeared with her. No memoirs, no personal accounts, no unfiltered record of her thoughts, just fragments written by others. So what do historians believe today? Some argue that her silence is symbolic, a reflection of how women in power were documented, rather than how they actually lived. Others believe her voice was deliberately minimized by later chroniclers, reshaped to fit a narrative of male-dominated rule. And some suggest the truth is even simpler, that her words existed once, but were lost, destroyed by time, politics, or both. Because in early medieval history, what survives isn't always what mattered most. It's just what wasn't erased. Today, Amalasuntha remains an enigmatic figure, her legacy preserved in scattered texts, political records, and second-hand accounts. A queen who ruled, but is rarely heard. A princess raised in power, yet remembered in silence. And maybe that's what makes her story so compelling. Not what we know, but what we don't. Because somewhere in those marble halls, in those guarded chambers, in those letters written in her name, there was a voice, a real one, thoughtful, strategic, human, and yet history never let us hear it. Maybe the greatest mystery isn't why this princess was silent. Maybe it's why history chose not to listen.